I will officially kick off our masterclass with Magdalena. Magdalena, thank you so much for being our guest. We had a fantastic performance with you a few years ago when you played, and just recently watched the video on harpsichord and the piano, so it was lovely. And I honestly can't think of a better person to talk about Bach than you, and also considering you do have a harpsichord.
That's right behind me, yes.
Right. So, we can actually have a nice, right, we can see the piano, hear the piano as well as harpsichord. So probably, especially our young people who don't have the harpsichord in their house, it would be very helpful for them to hear, the difference and how different interpretation is, how you interpret music differently on the different instrument. So thank you. Thank you for the teachers who assembled, this group of young people. I'm very grateful. We also have David is from Albany, New York. So we have some students who are joining in from not only from Naples, but also from other parts, which is wonderful. And I will ask everybody is muted, yes. So we don't should avoid the background noise. And I will let you, Magdalena, take over.
Thank you so much, Milana, and thank you all for joining. I just really want to say how much I admire all your efforts in making sure that the music goes on for the audiences, for the students, and to all of you guys who are going to play for me today, for continuing to practice despite the fact that we don't know when the next time will be when we can play in front of a live audience. It's a very difficult way to stay motivated, and so you're doing the difficult thing, and I really, really admire that. It's wonderful to see so many motivated young people, and of course, congratulations also to your teachers who keep you motivated. So I really look forward to hearing Mason's invention number 8, one of my favorites. Mason, how old are you?
I'm 11.
11, okay. And you've been playing for a while?
Mm-hmm. I've been playing for 4 years.
4 years, okay, wonderful. And is this your first invention?
This is my second.
Second, okay. Which one did you play before?
Invention 6.
Wow, oh gosh, another gorgeousness. Okay, wonderful. I am opening my score and I'm all ears. I'm going to mute myself. Fabulous, bravissimo. I am sure you are imagining the thunderous applause everywhere else. Wonderful job. This piece is much harder than any of us ever expect. A lot of piano students love to go on straight to the preludes and fugues because they think that, the inventions are so easy, but that is not true at all. In fact, this morning when I was playing through this invention to kind of warm up my fingers and my brain, I stumbled right there in this passage it is a very, very difficult couple of measures in this invention. Let me ask you, how do you practice this? You are playing it at a very breakneck speed. How do you practice it?
So basically what I would do is that I would start at one speed, let's say 88, okay? I would basically play just one line at 88, and then if I get it right, I'll go to playing the second line. And I'll do it until I play the whole song. And then I move on to, let's say, 92. And then I'll play one line, and then second line, and then the whole song. Basically like that.
And you do it hands together?
I can do sometimes if I'm like having trouble with the line, I'll do separate. But if it's pretty easy, I'll do both.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so I'm sure that, do you have the score in front of you by any chance? In measure 19, the one that I just played. Can you hear this, by the way? Yes? Okay. For that measure, there are spots in all repertoire, in all pieces, where you want to practice the left hand twice as much, at least twice as much. And this is one of these spots where instead, because the right hand is super easy there, right? There's not much going on. So you can pretty much do this with your eyes closed. So this would be a spot that I would pick for extra practice on the left hand alone. And then try to, let's actually try this. Are you able to pick up from right there? And do it slowly. And don't look at the right hand at all, because I think you can handle it. Try the right hand a little. Very good. And then let's do the next measure. Very good. And now can you do it with your eyes shut and really make sure that the right hand and the left hand are perfectly aligned. Excellent. I couldn't see whether your eyes were closed, but if they were, that is very impressive. Very good. And so as you see, if you practice sometimes with your eyes closed, your sense of hearing becomes even more sensitive and heightened, right? So that is another thing to consider. Very good. I noticed that a lot of what you do is very downbeat oriented. So for example, if I were to pick a random measure, let's say here, you start practicing from the beginnings of the measure. And I just want to draw your attention to one important thing, which will also be the case in the fugues later. If you look at the first measure, how does it start? What's the first value that starts this measure, the opening measure?
The first measure, it has a rest.
Exactly. Very good, right? So we are starting actually on a rest, on a silence. And so we might wonder why Bach does this. And you'll see that 99% of the fugues actually also start on a rest. And it makes it simply easier to hear the so-called subject, right? Because this is the subject that will be later repeated, and it makes it clearer to pick out by the ear. So when I'm practicing these kinds of things, I like to put words into the music so that it speaks. By the way, I don't know if you have the Henley edition, but there is a very short preface that Bach himself wrote for the piece. And so what he's basically saying, he says, this is an honest method for not only learning how to play in 2 and 3 parts, but also maybe composing. I don't know, maybe you compose a little bit. But also learning how to communicate. So he's saying, you know what? I'm not going to write these long books on how to play music. I'm just going to leave you with these inventions and you figure it out. So he's giving us a lot of information in these pieces. So back to the words. Can you play the beginning while singing these words? I just can't wait to play. Try that. I just can't wait to play.
I just can't wait to play.
Fantastic, exactly. And there was this enthusiasm that with which you approached the highest note. I just can't wait to play. It now really sounded like some sort of a trumpet fanfare, and you were communicating, which is so important because that's exactly what Bach wants us to learn from these inventions. So why am I saying this? It's because the downbeats, the beginnings of the measures, will not always be the most important parts of the measure. So here, for example, the theme every single time starts on the rest, right? I just can't wait to play. I just can't wait to play. I just can't wait to play, right? You see the hands are imitating each other after the downbeat, which also means that when you go, wait to play, and then you come down, you see the contour of the melody is slightly more interesting this way than right, just downbeat oriented. So that is something really cool to explore. So could you play one more time, maybe the first 3 lines, and every time you see the subject, the main melody, can you say to yourself, I just can't wait to play? Both left and right hand. It's going to be hard.
I'll try.
That's the spirit.
I just can't wait to play. Oh my god.
Right.
I just have to say, I just can't wait to play. And then I just can't wait to play. I just can't. Oh gosh.
Right. All of a sudden, the piece comes out in a whole new dimension. How about we slow down a little bit?
Okay. I just can't wait to play. I just can't. I just can't wait to play. Oh gosh.
Well, that's a very good first attempt. So when you practice later today or tomorrow, try that in a slower tempo, and I think it will really open your ears to how Bach builds these melodies. Another very important thing is the kind of tension that we have between this, the fanfare, the leaping up, and then, right? Bach is immediately letting the melody fall, and he doesn't go straight down by the scale. That would have been boring. He goes, which makes it look like a little spiral, right? It's really interesting. And so to see that, somebody, let's say, jumping and then falling back down in a spiral, it is such an interesting thing to imagine. And that's always how I imagine the piece as well. So try to play that maybe a little bit more slowly. Forget for now about the I just can't wait to play. And just imagine the shapes. If you were to make an animation, let's say, right, for YouTube of this piece, just imagine somebody jumping on a trampoline and then falling down in a spiral motion. And let's just all imagine that while Mason is playing.
Wait. All right. I'll do this.
Yes, right? It creates this really interesting dialogue of jumping up and falling down, jumping up and falling down. It is so lively and so fun to play. And together with those I just can't wait to play syllables, I think it will make a very good combination. Now, how do we know where one section ends and when another section begins? Are you able to see that in the piece? Are there any moments of kind of rest, repose?
So actually, if you look at measure 11, I actually have the notes right here. So this part, wait,
Yes.
you can see that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of where you're playing a crescendo. It's kind of, and you're ending on the C like. Wait. Oh, sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it starts up with the subject again.
Absolutely. Wow. Yes. Very good observation. And is your teacher here with us today?
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. Wow, you guys are really a dream team. Fantastic. Yes, and this could not be more right. That measure 11 is what we call a cadence, right? It kind of sounds like the piece could almost end there, except we're in the wrong key. Right? We are in C major. So because the whole invention is in F major, then we know it's really not the end. But it sounds a little bit like a kind of conclusion, right? So that's called a cadence, right? Sort of a period following a musical sentence. And these cadences are so important to look for in any piece of Bach's or any other composer. So this way you give yourself a little bit of a break, kind of mentally, and also to your audience. It's so, so important. Very good. So tell me, Mason, do you have any particular spots that are driving you crazy in this piece that you'd like to explore together?
It's kind of a bit at the end. So what do you like kind of when you're playing the ritardando, if you would like to? What do you do, like very slowly, or what do you kind of like a little bit? Like you would slow down just a little bit, or would you like completely slow down?
That is such a good question. What do you think?
I think you should kind of slow down just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree with you, but so let's explore this a little bit further. So if you were to tell your friend who has no idea about music, about this piece that you're playing, what would you say about it? What kind of character energy, what is it about?
Well, whenever I play it, it's kind of like when you're painting a picture, and that picture could be like a clock, because you have little bits and gears kind of moving around, and it's kind of like at a steady tempo and a little fast sometimes. Like it's fast kind of, because you have like the tick tock going like tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
That is fantastic. I love the comparison to a clock. Yes, because it does move in a kind of motoric fashion, right? Like a mechanical clock. And there's a lot of little gears that are working together. I love it. So then if we were to go with this comparison to a clock, what does a clock do when it stops? Do you want it to stop? Do you want the clock to run out of power? Do you? I actually, myself, I'm a big fan of forging right through. So you will hear what I'm doing. I am slowing down a little bit, but my energy doesn't go down. See, because you can slow down as though a train would slow down coming to a stop, but that's a bit of a bummer. And so I am a big fan of. Right? So I am essentially just delaying the last chord slightly, but my energy keeps going up as though to say, look at this magnificent clockwork. Okay, just try that.
Okay. Am I muted? No, I'm not. All right.
Yes. You can pick up any place that's comfortable.
Wait, give me a second.
Why don't you go a little bit before?
Okay. Oh boy. Yeah, I should.
I love that. I think that finishing on a high note, on high energy, makes a lot of sense, especially in this piece, right? Excellent. And then I wanted to say one more thing, and I can't remember now. Oh, yes. The fact that you are making dynamic gradations, that you're making crescendos and diminuendos and changing the color here in the middle of this invention, I think it's a wonderful thing to do. Because you're playing on the piano and not on a harpsichord, harpsichord does not have these capabilities. You can't make a crescendo or diminuendo on a harpsichord. But since you are playing the piano, which has those possibilities, I totally agree with your choice to not try to play like a machine, right? Even though we are imagining clockwork, but you are making your performance very organic and exciting. So bravo on that. Super. I think that's all the time we have, but congratulations and bravo.
Thank you.
Good job, Mason. Thank you for doing it. All right, our next person is going to be Grace Angel. So if you can...
There you are.
Set up. Do we see her?
Yes, perfect. What a beautiful name you have, Grace Angel.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So, and you have the Prelude Fugue in C major for us. Yes, fantastic. How long have you been playing the piano?
I've been playing seriously for about 6 years.
Okay, and before that, not seriously?
My first teacher taught me like some very basic stuff for like a year, or not even a year. So it wasn't really...
Understood.
It wasn't moving forward my technique or anything like that. She didn't know very much herself, but she was a very sweet lady. So, yeah.
Yeah. See, a good teacher is such an important aspect, right, of your learning. Wonderful. I am muting myself, and let's hear it. Bravissima. So beautiful. And it is a tremendously difficult and complex piece. Very, very good job. Tammy, is your teacher with us here?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. That's fine.
I couldn't see her.
Yes, I think she is.
Ah, wonderful. Okay. Oh, so nice to be supported by your teacher. So fantastic. Well, so many wonderful things to discuss. I wonder if I have the screen sharing option because I want to show you something really cool. Oh, no, I don't. Maybe if I send it to you, Milana, maybe you can, or I can just, let's see, maybe I can just send it in chat. And if you guys are interested in checking, no, doesn't work like that. I wanted to show you the manuscript of the prelude and how Bach.
Try right now. I think maybe you have the.
Oh,
I can
yes.
share my screen.
Milana. Yes. Okay. Because it's such a touching thing to see that, and we don't know whether it's actually Bach's own hand. Some of the copies were made by his children or his wife, but if you just look at, he's starting out and so on, and then whether it's because maybe paper was so expensive back then, or whether he just said, okay, you guys get the idea, he totally he wrote basically the rest of this prelude in shorthand. You see, right here where my cursor is, he's just writing chords. So it is so interesting to see because he just said, okay, here's a pattern, and the rest of it you will do in the same manner as the beginning. And I always find it such a wonderful document to look at when you connect with this prelude, and you play it with such beauty, such poetry. And whether Bach was thinking about beauty and poetry, that's another thing. He considered himself very much an artisan type, where he believed that if anybody just worked as hard as he did, they could achieve the same things. Whether that's true, who knows? I think Bach's achievements really tops so many fellow humans. But I loved how you played. I think you would be a really good harpsichordist too. Your hand position was so focused, and you played it with beautiful evenness while giving it color as well. So just like Mason, I really want to commend you on making use of the capabilities, the expressive capabilities of the piano. I would love you to play for us just once this prelude in blocked chords, okay? And try to give each chord as much emphasis as you think it should get.
Okay. Do you want me to play it twice for each measure?
No, just once, like this. wow, that was fabulous. It sounds like you may have already done it before. No? Oh, wow, really, very impressive. Very, very good. So the second page, you warmed up and you got much more bold with your expression and your colors. At the very beginning, let's just work on the opening. Right? This is pretty much the same formula that you will find, the kind of harmonic formula that you will see in every other prelude. We're about to hear the C minor prelude, as well as the prelude in the... It's the same harmonies in almost every single prelude of Bach. So that's something worth noting. When you are looking for ways to be expressive in Baroque music, because Bach didn't have time to write a lot of slurs or forget dynamics, I would always recommend looking for dissonance. So there's none here, right? We're in a perfectly clean C major chord, but here already we have this C and D kind of biting already, right? So that is giving us an idea that this is worth emphasizing, and that this dissonance will, of course, have to resolve to a consonant. So you will want to give more power to this chord so that you can later release that tension. Do you see? So try that one more time, just the first 4 measures this way. Very, very good. And then what you have next, do you know what a sequence is? Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. So for those of you who don't, it's a fragment of music that is repeated, a pattern that is repeated lower or higher. So in this case, that's our pattern, and it gets repeated lower and so on, right? So Bach and other Baroque composers use sequences a lot. So very simple rule for those: if you have a sequence that's falling, it will be an equivalent of a diminuendo, right? So you want to give a little bit more here in measure 5 so that you have room to descend. Mm-hmm. Okay, try that. Fabulous. Very good. And so that's an important moment here. As we were talking with Mason before, this is your cadence, right? It sounds like some sort of a conclusion. Mm-hmm. So, okay. And then from here, we start building again, right? In these dissonances. So that hopefully will give you a very quick guide to how to be expressive in the music. So let's think for a moment also about why Bach didn't write any indications for us. Why wouldn't he? Anybody knows?
Because the harpsichord didn't have those abilities.
That's absolutely a very good reason. But there was also a clavichord which did have some dynamic. It was operating on a just piano, mezzo piano level, but it did have crescendo capabilities. And of course, there were other instruments like violins, oboes that could easily make a crescendo. So why wouldn't he do this? It's strange, right? Well, the answer is that the music back then was kind of, so to say, disposable, in that he would never imagine that we would be playing this today and thinking about this music, putting it on pedestal. It was just something that he wrote for his kids or for his students to learn from, and he just told them right on the spot if they did something incorrectly, so to say, and there was no need for preserving it, for posterity, because it was just not even the fashion at the time. So it took 100 years after Bach's death to come back to his work and perform it again. So even his sons, they call him an old wig, and said, we're not playing that stuff. We have our new style of composing, and they immediately threw all his compositions, back into the closet. So that kind of explains a lot, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So Grace, another thing you can do, because you have that freedom at the very end. Actually, yes. Here, measure 32. The piece could end right here because we are coming back to C major. But what Bach does, right? He injects that dissonance, that B flat in the right hand, saying, I'm not done yet. Can you do that for me? Maybe from measure 30? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 measures from the end. Very beautiful. Yes, that's worth stressing. In the second to the last measure, I don't know which edition you have, but this Henley edition shows a tiny little trill here. So you can do that, or you can ornament it even more if you feel so inclined. You can do really anything, because the score of Bach's music is really just a canvas for you to paint on, right? He's not saying, well, if I didn't put it in the score, it shouldn't be there, right? He's saying, be creative. So try that just once last time. Absolutely, yes. It gives us an extra split second to enjoy this cadence. Yeah. We have to kind of rush through because we have a lot of music to hear today. But my question about the fugue, when you started, you play it non-legato, right? And then when you get to 4 measures from the end, your left hand is playing the subject legato. Is there a reason for that?
Nope. Except probably the only reason I can think of is maybe some discomfort in the hand trying to figure out how to do it all, but no specific reason.
Got it. Okay. I was wondering. So there is another extremely simple rule, and Bach's son, CPE, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, wrote this in his book. So Bach had, as you probably know, 21 kids, but David is like, what? but not all of them survived to adulthood. This was before various vaccines and medication and so on. So those who did became famous composers, and so CPE, Bach, was one of them. And he wrote this whole treatise saying, well, my father did this and my father did that, which gives us a little bit of insight on how Bach would have done stuff. And he said a super simple thing. He said, if you don't know how to phrase a melody properly, just sing it. Mind-blowing, right? It's so simple. So if you were to sing this opening, Grace, how would you sing it? Can you do it for us? Wow. Oh my gosh. I didn't expect such a gorgeous singing from you too. Wow. Okay. So what you did not do was bum, 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 right? You sang da, 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 da. And then you went bum, 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 bum. You actually switched syllables here. So that gives me a lot of important information about how you really want to play this theme. Okay? So imagine, do you sing in a choir, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Aha, that explains a lot. Okay, so imagine your choir singing this, because this music actually comes from the vocal tradition of choir music for many voices. Try that with that angelic voice that you just sang with. Try. So play for us, but have your voice in mind as you play, or you can sing along. Okay, well, see, I rest my case because, I thought we would take, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to work on the articulation here, but you just solved all of it. So if you can do that for each time the subject appears throughout this fugue, then you're in business. I think, yeah, you just played this subject with the most perfect articulation. It's, again, so organic and it sounds right. Right? So, yeah, do keep in mind when you play the music of Bach, especially the fugues, that they are derived from the vocal tradition. If you ever want to, spend some time on YouTube checking out the vocal music of Bach, that's also very helpful, because you will also hear how the syllables are put together. Most of it is sacred music, right? So music for worship, and it really opens the musician's ears to that kind of stuff. I really have nothing more to say because you just did it. So when you practice, just employ that same fantastic articulation that you just found. Okay? Wonderful. Brava, brava.
Thank you. Beautiful playing. All right, so Paloma, you will be our next participant. So please unmute yourself. Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Please introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're playing.
So I'm Paloma Chaprinka, and I will be playing Prelude and Fugue in C minor.
Fabulous. Gorgeous. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Paloma, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How long have you played the piano?
I've been playing seriously for 4 years, and I am 10 years old.
Wow, so yeah, that's quite an advanced piece for a 10-year-old. So you guys have a lot of talent in Naples. I'm really, really glad to hear so much great playing. Fabulous. And is this your first Prelude and Fugue?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it happens to be the first for a lot of pianists who are, for getting acquainted with the music of Bach. And it reminds me actually of the video that I've been doing these videos ever since we got locked down. And you can find them on my YouTube channel, and where I'm also talking exactly about this very Prelude and Fugue. I called it So You Want to Play the Fugue, because there's a lot to talk about. And if we run out of time, then I'll just send you a link to the video, which will explain some other stuff, because I mostly want to talk about your playing. So, as I was just talking to Grace, the preludes have the same opening harmonies, right? So Grace was just playing, and here your prelude starts. Right? Do you hear how similar they are? Yeah, even though it's major and minor. So then what are all these other notes doing here? Like those third, 16th notes. What are they?
Well, I think is the main melody, and then these are just the accompaniment to go with it.
Yeah, very, very good, Paloma. Excellent. So yeah, we actually call them neighbor tones, right? Because it just dips for a little second to that D as a neighbor and pops right back out. So, but what it really is those chords. Yes, and you're absolutely right that the main structure is this. Yes. So other than that, you only have these neighbors. So you are doing something that may be really good for practice, but maybe in performance, you may want to lighten up your thumbs, because you're doing, do you see? And sometimes, it's really good for you to keep track where you are, but maybe in performance, it gets a little too hip-hop-like, So see if you can lighten up that middle of the measure. That is already so much better. Very, very good, Paloma. Now, so also these pinkies here, there's not really so much need for accenting them, but what was done in the past was to keep those pinkies on the key just a little bit longer. So sort of to overhold them a little bit, so that gives you more of that warm feeling of maybe harmony, other than, right? This sounds a little bit more like poking, and right, this is a little softer, and you get the C for a little bit longer. See if you can do that. That's good. And you don't always have to slow down to do that. Just, hold the pinkies while you move on with other music. Very, very good. How do you practice this to stay precise?
Well, sometimes I practice hands separately, and I work like little sections that sometimes I mess up on, and just sometimes I do it with the metronome, just sometimes slow, sometimes in tempo, sometimes little sections like that.
Wow. So yeah, you definitely have your method all figured out. That's super. I have one more suggestion for you, and that is to, because it's very hard to keep these hands playing together, right? So I would maybe just practice once by skipping the pinkies all together and just going. See, even I'm messing this up. Try that. Yes. Excellent. See, and all of a sudden, this is just like when we were doing this with Mason with the syllables. All of a sudden, it makes you realize, wow, I thought I knew the piece, but it's showing me yet another dimension, which makes me feel like a beginner again. And it's a wonderful way to keep your brain engaged and your listening skills improving, right? Because just to keep these hands together is quite a challenge. So for this prelude, I would definitely recommend focusing on the left hand even more. Are you a righty or lefty?
I'm a righty.
Righty, exactly. So a lot of us are righties, and it comes out in our piano playing. So that means that we have to pay double attention to the left hand. Okay, you are doing super well. I would also recommend the same thing that I recommended to Grace. Just try to play without these neighbor notes and find out where the tensions lie in the piece. Now, we get to this stuff here. Can you play from right there, measure 25? Yes, very nice. So this, we call this technique a pedal point. It comes from organ playing. Have you ever seen anybody playing the organ?
Yeah.
You have, okay. So you probably remember that there are multiple keyboards on the organ, not only right in front of you, but there's another one right by your feet. So this note here, that G on your pinky, would have been played by somebody's foot most likely and held to make the space shake. So you see, it is building, right? So even though the organ also doesn't have the capability of making a crescendo, you can make it sound bigger with each chord, right? Can you try that for us? Yes, that's right. And we finally arrive here, right? Exactly. And then we have, do you have a different tempo?
Yeah.
Yeah, what does it say there?
Presto.
Very good. So we don't think that it was Bach who wrote it. Maybe it was one of his sons or his students, but it would certainly be played in faster tempo because the whole pattern changes there, right? Yeah, so it's a little bit like Bach was kind of improvising there, and he just happened to write it down, right? So see if you can be a little bit more free there. Maybe take time. Very good. And then, so what happens next? Another change, right? Tell us, what is it?
Now it's adagio.
That's right. So adagio, what does it mean in your understanding?
Well, it is kind of, I'd say, maybe not exactly a walking pace, maybe a little slower than a walking pace.
Yeah, I agree with you. And adagio, if you were talking to an Italian person, they would tell you adagio means a great deal of freedom. So it basically says do whatever you want. so you can play this trill as long as you want, you know. See if you can really do whatever you want there. Yes, very good. Another important thing here with the notation, for those of you who don't have the score in front of you, I don't know if you can see this, but so what Paloma is doing, she's being very faithful to the score by playing, right? You are very good about your rhythm. You have figured out what goes twice as fast and so on. But we are in adagio, right? So it says do whatever you want, which means this notation really means to say speed up gradually, right? Otherwise, it sounds very boxy. Yeah? See, I just kind of slide into a faster tempo very gradually. Try that again. Wow, you're good. You're able to transform your playing within seconds. That's wonderful. And then here too, so we have another change of tempo. And now, in measure 36, you're playing a little bit like this, which is the way that the notes are grouped. But if you think about right? What I'm trying to do is block these notes into chords. Are you able to find those chords there in measure 36? That's 3 measures from the end.
Yes.
Try to play them for us, would you? Very, very good, right? So it kind of goes against the boxes of beats, but it makes it so much more interesting, right? And I think that the Bach would be much bigger fan of than, right? So we have to be very careful when we play this music to not get fooled by the bar lines and the beats, right? Because you know, what could Bach do? It was just a way to notate the music, but to take it off the page is a very different and much more fun thing, right? And you are able to do that so well. What I always do also at the very, very end is something that would have been done on a harpsichord, which is to overhold. Okay? So see, instead of going note by note, I go, and it gives me a nice that was totally allowed, and it gives you a bigger sound. Try that. Oh, I see what you're doing. You're playing different fingering. So, you're playing, yes, 5, 2, 1, 2. What if you tried the last 5, 3, 2, 1? just a suggestion. You know, your teacher may not love it, but you know, you guys can discuss it afterwards. So that's kind of how I do it. And one extremely cool thing that Bach is doing. Can you play the highest 3 notes of the last measure? The highest 3 notes. Yes, the highest 3 notes, right? And what does it sound like? It sounds like the beginning of the fugue, right? So he's giving us a little sneak preview, you know, and then we have the fugue right there with the same notes. That is really, really cool. Very good. The fugue. Tell me, do you have any particular spots in the fugue that you need help with?
Maybe when it starts the do 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 do. Here. Like when you have to jump to get to the. Here, let me see.
Uh-huh. It's very, very hard. And I tell you, actually, I have a little cheat and I have a little hack there. So I play that F with my right hand. So then this way I don't have to rush to that F. But it's actually better, it's more correct that you play it the way you do. Because the melody, so the F actually starts a new phrase. So that means that even if you continue playing it with your left hand, just take your time, right? So let's see, if you look a little bit before that on left hand, measure 9. Right? So this was my lowest note, measure 10. It happens to be downbeat, but it's the end of the previous melody, and then I'm starting my new melody, and so on. So it's the same case here, that the melody actually starts on the second 16th note, so no reason to rush there. Okay, why don't you try from that same spot? Yes. So in other words, don't be at all afraid that you're losing time there by taking the time. You need to articulate this. Bach understood that the hands are only this big, and in fact, when you play the harpsichord, they always tell you don't stretch your hands. Just keep them nice and focused. So if you listen to any harpsichord playing on YouTube, you will hear how much time they're taking, because they're shifting their hands. They're not going like this, right? So that happens with Rachmaninoff later on. So I would do a kind of almost a visual exercise when you are away from the piano, by kind of almost trying to connect the dots. So you look at the melodic line, and if it's falling, so to connect those dots and then start a whole new drawing by connecting these dots. And you will see that those phrases have very little to do with the bar lines, right? We're so used to the bar lines, but even though you are very young, you're super advanced. So I think that you can start thinking about those bar lines a little bit differently already. Yeah, really super. Do you have any other questions?
I don't think so. No.
Wow, I wish we had more time for this, but your playing is marvelous, and just keep going. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Bravo, Paloma.
Great job, Paloma. Thank you so much for doing it. All right, so Julia, now it's your turn. So let's set you up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep, great. All right, wonderful.
Cool.
Please introduce yourself and tell everybody what you'll be playing and how old you are.
Okay. My name is Julia Daniart. I'm 14, and I'm going to be playing a selection of pieces from Bach's French Suite Number 4, the pieces Air and Jid.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I'll just start.
Bravissima. Wow, I love the energy that you bring to this piece. How long have you been working on it?
I've been working on it since last August or September.
Wonderful.
Oh,
Yeah, There's plenty of work to be done. It's possible that you may have grown a lot in the past couple months, because I'm thinking maybe it's worth rethinking after, of course, our session, your position. Because when I look at you play, I'm seeing that this angle is becoming less than right angle, which means that you're blocking some of your energy here. So that's it. Like that. Oh yeah. Or you can just sit much more straight.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. I know it's not easy with all these hours at the piano, but so just make sure as you grow to keep adjusting your position. That makes it for speak about the difficulties of playing an instrument, especially when one grows and one's hands grow. Every day your keyboard feels different under your fingers. So just be patient and keep doing a great work. Wonderful choice of repertoire. Did your teacher choose it, or did you choose it?
We were in between French suites, but I chose before.
It's also one of my favorites. So Air, it's an interesting name for a dance, right? Because these are dances.
Definitely.
Right. So have you thought or maybe read a little bit about what air could mean?
Not really. I know Jaden's obviously.
That's fine. That's why I'm here. So that's great. So air really in a suite of dances is really one of those more serene and kind of simpler, but not simple to play, of course, but simpler in expression pieces. Something that sounds a little bit more like a folk song rather than a court dance. Right, so I like so much that fresh energy that you bring to this air, and again, you will see now that it's a little bit of my obsession to take the music off the downbeats, off the beats. So here we're starting. Sorry. Okay, so fairly simple, but what really is happening is, right? We are hearing this opening note, followed by a leap, which then, if we were to connect the dots, then creates a scale. So if you can think a little bit more of those beats, I think that it will help you bring out even more energy. And especially when you get to measure 2 in the middle of it. Measure. Right, so if you were to connect the dots, they would almost always start on the second 16th note, not the first. Okay, can you try just the right hand for us to show us, to demonstrate to all our listeners how that works?
Okay.
Fantastic. I especially liked what you did here. Sorry. Right? Because you are building up a sequence. We talked about sequences before, and if it goes up, you want to increase the level of energy. Very good. Make sure that all these fingers, which happen to be the weaker fingers. Do you know, by the way, why the wedding band is usually put on the 4th finger? It's because that finger that is dependent on the other finger, right? So it's kind of a symbol of depending on your life partner and being together, right? So voila. But here as pianists, we try to make this finger as independent as possible. So if you could try again, measure 4 and make sure that your 4th and 5th finger are as equal as the others.
Okay.
A little bit more slowly. it's always important to keep going to slow tempo and, give yourself kind of a reality check in a slow tempo. Very good. When I'm not sure if I'm playing evenly, I sing along and I just go da 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 da. Try that to make sure that all syllables are equal. Same place. Did you hear that? Just toward the end, you went a little bit, right? Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's always really important, but especially in dance music, right? Because if your rhythm starts, so to say, limping, then it affects the dance, right? And the dance was just such a very important part of life back in the Baroque era. So what's really fascinating, Bach never really traveled more than 30 kilometers outside of his hometown, but he was very well educated and he knew the French style, even though he never spent 1 minute in France. He knew, he was listening, he was copying music by French composers. So he was kind of absorbing that style like a sponge. And so he was able to write these French suites without ever stepping foot in the country. He spoke French, he was able to, to read it as well. So, and he understood the importance of dance kind of in the society. So can you imagine if you didn't know how to dance, minuets and jigs and all this, you would not even be considered, a worthy member of the court, of the royal court. So if you didn't know the latest choreography, let's say, for minuet, you would not get an invitation next time to the royal ball. So people were scrambling every week to learn the new dance, to make sure that they shine at the ball, otherwise they're off the mailing list. It's a lot of pressure, right? So yeah, I think that taking that aspect of seriousness is really important. Good. Can we hear it one more time in tempo and think about all these things that we just discussed, the kind of importance, the social importance of dance, but also the air being more pastoral, more country-like.
Okay.
I think what will help you add even more lightness is to make the left hand even shorter. So right, a little bit more bouncy. Try that, and really, really focus on the evenness of the right hand.
Okay.
Very, very good. Okay. I so much like how Bach is connecting to the repeat, right? He is using that same scale. So these scales are chasing each other. If you just hear this, right? Can you do right there from the first ending and make these scales really chase each other? Yes, that's and you smiled and you make us also smile because this music is fun. Yes, it is a really light, fun dance. And do you practice ever in rhythms like this kind of stuff?
No, I don't think I've ever done that.
Okay, this could be a really good exercise, especially for this dance, to practice, 2 slow, 2 fast. Yeah, da, 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 da. And then reverse that. So this way you are able to, like I was saying to Grace or Paloma, or maybe both ladies, you are able to see the piece from a totally different angle, and it really challenges your mind. Good. So keep that left hand out, and here measure 18. Another really interesting thing that Bach is doing at the very end, he could have written, right? It's so much closer to go up from that D, but he instead goes, so strange. Why do you think he would do that?
Maybe it was like a big finish, kind of, to give it a little more difference.
Right. Yeah, I think maybe he wants us to take time and to make sure we don't rush into the ending. And it makes it also much more interesting and original, right? I always find these spots where there are big leaps, moments to really pay attention, because that's where he's making things difficult to make us go, oh, okay, that's important. All right. The G was fantastic. I love the energy again. The G is a dance that didn't really make it to the royal court, but it came from an Irish dance that that was danced by the folk people, in towns, and so in bars and taverns, and so you can imagine them, hopping along and kind of brawling around, and it has that very lovely, simple lilt to it. So they're always in a compound meter. So this one is in 6/8, and in 6/8 we usually count it in two. So 1, 2, 1, 2, right? Like this, to make things easier. So the second beat, the second part of the measure, will always be a little bit lighter. So when you play, you sound a little bit more like this. Right? It seems all down, 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 which is just fine. But the dance would have a little bit more of that lilt. So down, up, up. See? So try to take a little bit of weight off the second part of the measure. Try that. Yum. Yes, you got it. It feels so different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're doing it, and it's really important because this is this kind of dance. Yum. Yeah, it's like I said, very, very jolly, very kind of simple, and here we literally have explosions of joy. Right? So you can treat every one of these phrases as a mini firework. How about that? Okay? So you have a beautiful piano. You can use a lot of crescendo and diminuendo to color it even more. Okay? Try from the beginning in your tempo. You got it. I really enjoyed these crescendos, and it gives it, for you it's more interesting to play, and for us it's more interesting to listen. Very good. When you practice, be super, super obsessed about the rhythm. So one, you may want to even say it to yourself. So it's perfectly, danceable. I really also appreciated how you did these fast passages. These are so difficult. I mean, you make them sound easy, but all this here, the G, is not easy. That's another example of connecting the dots. We don't play it, but rather, see? Yeah, try that measure 19, just the right hand. That's right. Even though the notation suggests this, but this just sounds not so dance-like, right? And if you were to sing it the way that Grace did, our brain just regroups these phrases by doing it's much harder to do right? So very good. Now what happens always in the second half of the G, by the way, do you notice how each dance has those distinct two halves, right? Yeah, so that's called binary form. They're always going to be AA, B, B, right? So in the B section of every G of the world, you will have the main melody inverted. So the beginning sounded like this. And so the second half is actually inverted. So, right, instead of going up, you go down. And the second measure is responded to from, it's as though you put a mirror in between those two, and that's what you get. It's interesting to observe that every has that. Mm-hmm. Very good. These are totally amazing, very difficult trills. Can you start the second half for us? I love my horses. I'm hearing my voice with an echo. I love how you're keeping your cool there and not letting the trills escape. I have sometimes difficulty with it myself. So keep in mind, light, heavy, light. Right? Not. Try one more time. Perfect. So just think always of the second part of the measure as an arrow up. So down and up and down and up. It will be much easier for you to sort of dance it. Okay. Do you have any specific spots or questions?
Not really.
Not really. Wow, you play with so much love and joy. So definitely keep it up.
Thank you.
Bravo. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Julia, thank you. And our last participant will be Calvin. Let's see Calvin.
Between you two guys, it's so sweet. Would you coordinate like that?
Cover.
Oh, great.
Okay, Calvin, can you play a few notes just to check the sound? All right. Okay, thank you. Can you introduce yourself to everybody and just say what you're playing and how old you are?
Okay. Hello, my name is Calvin Liu, and I'm 16, and I'm going to play the first three movements from the Bach French Suite Number 4, Allemand, Corinth, and Sarabande.
Great. Do you guys have the same teacher? You and Julia?
No.
Okay. Because I just found it interesting that you both play the same. Cool.
Okay.
Let's hear them all. Let's hear them all.
Okay, let's do them all.
Well, I mean, you have the Courant and the Saraband, right?
Oh, so you want me to play them all? Like,
I would love you to, yes. Bravissimo, what a delight to hear you play. This is really, you play with a great deal of maturity, and I can tell that you have spent some time and given some thought to the pieces. How long have you been working on this?
I think around 2 months.
2 months. Oh wow! So they're quite fresh still. Wow. Yeah, marvelous. Really marvelous. I'm going to spend less time on the first two so that we can discuss the saraband in some more detail. You're doing so many wonderful things, and one of them being in the allemande, you are making sure that the left hand plays as important role as the right hand, right? Again, on the harpsichord or the organ, both hands would have sounded at the same level. So I'm glad that you're not trying to bring out the right hand as though it was a nocturne, right? Because it's not. So that's very, very important. So this is a dance. Allemande is a German dance that was kind of a walked, very processional dance that was done in couples. And if you watch period movies, costume movies, you can only imagine the weight of this stuff that these people were wearing, and the wigs and the swords and unbelievable amounts of velvet. So that was probably 30 pounds of clothing on them. So things happened, at a slightly different pace. And I really like how you reflect that in your playing. It also happens to have that harmonic structure of a prelude. This is just an aside, right? But then he sort of spins out of that pattern as though he couldn't stop, and it makes it so much more delightful because it is a dance, but it also serves as a prelude, at least in this suite. Very good. Small things such as measure 7. This is a fantastic example of Bach ending a phrase in the middle of the forest, so to say. You see that middle voice in the measure 7? Yeah, I think that we have to give these tiny, minute details a huge amount of attention. Right? So if you do it slowly, you will notice how it results. Try that, measure 7. Yeah. So you are still a little too active, right? So you're going, right? You are playing it as though it didn't end there, but here it's an end of some sort. Yeah. Exactly. And so it is those small motifs that make up for the sophistication of the dance, right? So make sure to pay huge attention to especially the middle voices where things are resolving, right? Like here. To build the small tensions and relaxations in the dance, because it was those details that really kept it going. Same thing in measure 9, for example. You resolve here, right? So these are these tiny kind of harmonic stops and starts. Do you see what I mean?
In measure 9.
Yeah, try that. So you see, yes, the way you just played that right hand, we obviously have a different addition, but that's how you played it, kind of with a crescendo toward that thumb on the G. See, these are two separate voices talking to each other. Yes. That's it. So listen very closely to these mini resolutions, right? Whenever you finish on some sort of a tonic chord, that is worth emphasizing, because from there you will blossom out again, right? And these two voices are speaking to each other, soprano and alto, with a great deal of tension, right? That's worth emphasizing. So same thing, measure 13, coming from. So see? If I were you, I would practice it by singing along with the alto voice. So this way you will see how these are two operatic characters in measure 19. Right? They are arguing, they are, disagreeing. It's quite remarkable. Can you try around there?
Measure 19?
13, or just the beginning of the second half. Yeah, that's it. So as you see, the alto voice kind of comments on what the soprano just said. It's like, oh, well, I don't think so. Think about it again. It's really marvelous. And the audience may not know what you did, but they will feel the depth once you looked at all these details. Yeah, but this is fabulous. Okay, the courante. It's a dance that literally runs, because courant means to run in French. So this would be done with tiny steps, very complex choreography for the courant, and I really noticed something that you do, which is so good, which is not holding all the notes as written. So in the Baroque era, the rule was that the notes were held for more or less half of their value, only half of their value. So I'm picking up a random measure like 19 here. It is notated, just for all of you who are listening. Right? It would sound just awful if you played it like that. So instead you are skipping. And can you try that for us again?
The whole measure 19?
Yes. That's it. So this is just to show everybody that you're doing this and that it is a very good thing to do, right? Just let the notes skip a little bit. Right? So that means not taking the notation literally, right? Just to, in general, when you have a measure in 3/4, the downbeat will be the heavier ones, and everything else after that is going to be bouncing up. So yum pa pam pa pam pa pam pa pam. See? Very good. And you did something very good just now in measure 20. You did it much better than the first time. you tapered off because this is a resolution, right? Even though, yes, it comes in the middle of the measure and so on. So before you play this, right, you kind of played through simply. This time you tapered off. And then you came up from it. So again, the same rule that we were talking about earlier, kind of connecting the dots and looking at the direction of the melodic line, it really helps a lot. I'm sorry I'm rushing through stuff, but if you have any questions in the meantime, just stop me, okay? The sarabande, really very important to know that it was a solo dance. So in a whole suite that's normally danced in couples, for the sarabande, everybody sits down and only the best dancer does the dance solo, okay? So it's a lot of responsibility. And what you may want to explore is the table of ornaments that Bach left us. You can just Google it and you'll see millions of images of it. So that you can spice it up a little bit with these trills or mordents. He left us some, but I think especially on the repeats, you can experiment with some of your own ornaments based on Bach's suggestions. I think that would be a really cool experiment. I like your tempo, by the way, not too slow. And so everybody always talks about that second beat of the sarabande, right? It's important to know, just for everybody, that it's not an accent. It's not but it's rather something that in a choreography would be a slide. So you actually rise up and slide. Right? So yeah, it gives it a whole different vibe. Try that. Fantastic. I really like that. Very organic. Now, for trills in the Baroque, especially in French Baroque music, and this is the German composer writing French music. The trills should technically start on the upper note. So if you see A, start the trill on the B flat. Good. That's right. Yes, so lovely. Now, this measure, this is actually an ornament. See? So normally a composer would just write this, but Bach actually took the trouble of writing out, this is a B flat chord ornament. He took the trouble of writing this out so we can actually steal ideas from his own music when we're looking for ways to ornament. So, next time you're playing a sarabande that doesn't have this all written down with a simple chord, you can steal the idea and literally put that measure in G major. So that's a great thing to do. I love how you're leading your left hand. So important. The Baroque music was really built from the bottom up, meaning that it was the bass line that was most important. Everything else was kind of improvisation. So making sure that the left hand leads is so important. Can you play for us one more time, measure 9? good, very good. Exactly. So where you just stopped in measure 16, that's another ornament, right, on just F minor chord. And for any of you who ever play this saraband, you will notice that Bach is actually painstakingly writing these ties. So he's showing you, try to hold on to the chord, overhold the notes, right? And so that shows us that we can totally do this in other pieces as well to add more volume, right? So I was telling Paloma, I think, right, when she finishes. Right? Yes, even though it is not written out like that, this measure here shows us that it's okay because he tells us to overhaul the notes in a way that outline an F minor, right? So a lot of cool hints that he's giving us, but you have a fantastic feel for this dance music. I think you must have in your previous incarnation you may have been a Baroque dancer. It's more like. Do you have any questions? Anything specific?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you just talk a little bit about the improvisation, for example, in Bach's music, right? So, and for example, in Calvin's case, in the saraband, how do you address those long notes that nothing is happening? And how does one, for example, a young person like our students, can start thinking about improvisation or what are the steps?
That is a very important question, right? Because as we were talking, the score is really just a skeleton for us to build upon, right? And for many years, the school of thought was that, if it's not in Bach's score, we don't do it because his music is so holy, that you don't add anything to it. But in fact, it's the opposite that is true. So there are multiple treatises on how to improvise this music, but instead of reading them, of course, if you feel like it, you can do that. But instead of doing that, you can steal ideas literally from the score, right? So I would start by picking up the table of ornaments, which is available in the preface to the inventions. But like I said, you can just Google them and they're all right there. It's a very short, just 2 lines, as you see, and it shows you the various squiggles and what they mean. And then you can just start adding those squiggles on long notes. And why would you do that on long notes? Because on the harpsichord, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear, but the sound of the harpsichord decays much more quickly. So you have to add trills to prolong the sound. So I don't know, could you even hear that?
Yep.
Okay. So that's really what those ornaments were to do. First, to prolong the notes, and second, to express. So if you have here, Bach just writes a simple mordent, but because it's a long note, you can play many more notes in that, right? So not just 3, but more. Right? Because you need to fill up the space with notes. So that already emboldens you to do something. The second time, he doesn't write anything, but we have this. Also, it's going to decay pretty quickly. So if you repeat the same thing, it will maybe be too predictable. So what do you want to do? How about going back and forth on that chord? See, I went down and up on the chord. So you can really deconstruct the music and play with it, right? Really play with it. The left hand in the next measure, Bach is writing, if we read it very literally, but what he really is saying is, I'm playing an A flat chord and I'm just rolling it out with this extra note as though I was strumming it on the guitar or on the lute. So I guess my first piece of advice would be to not treat this as a museum item, but rather a wonderful field of stealing ideas. So as I just showed you, this B flat chord, Bach is doing, right? And so you can steal that idea and transplant it to any other piece that you're playing. And voila, you already have one great measure of improvisation on a simple chord, right? So yeah, adding those trills, prolonging trills, in the Bach tables of ornaments, he will show you, oh yeah, there are 8 different ways of playing a trill. Not just like you can start it from a lower note, you can start it from way upper note, you can combine the two and so on, right? So I also have done lots of listening to music of French composers such as Rameau and Couperin to, again, steal ideas, because those guys, the French, were obsessed about their ornamentation, and they said, do not add anything to my score. It specifically said, and the scores look like a mess. There are so many squiggles that they tell you exactly how to perform. And Bach wasn't as obsessive, but since these are French suite, I think it's totally fine to steal ideas. They always say, good artists borrow ideas and the great artists steal them. So, it's the case with painters and musicians alike. So, but in general, just feel that this is yours. This is yours to build upon. Why else would you play it, right? Why wouldn't we just settle down for one YouTube recording of the piece and be done with it, right? But we all want to play it because we have something to say. So figure out what it is that you want to say. And like I said, there are plenty of examples within the music itself. We just have to know how to look at them and steal them for the future occasion.
Grace Angel has a question. Grace, go ahead. You can turn on your camera and audio.
There you go.
Out of curiosity, I was just curious, is there a specific reason why harpsichordists were not supposed to stretch their hand range and were supposed to keep it more small?
Very good question, Grace. I think it has to do with how tiny the keys were. You were actually...
Can you show actually?
Can you just... So, for example, let's see. I am playing an octave on the piano here, and I'm keeping that same position, and I'm getting a different interval on the harpsichord. So you see the keys are so much more tiny, and they are extremely shallow and very light to play. So brushing notes is much more of a danger when you play the harpsichord, because it's enough to just breathe on these keys. So the idea of keeping your hands focused is to simply avoid brushing notes, but also just control over the keys. Some of the keys were so tiny that the thumb didn't even fit on them. So the fingering of the period didn't include a whole lot of thumb. So check this out. The way you would play a scale would not even involve the thumb. So in Bach's music, he was already using more modern technique, but there are still pieces that he dedicated to his son, which show how to do the period fingering that doesn't use the thumb at all. It's fascinating. So it has to do, with the instrument qualities and also the fashion of performance, with a lot of so-called period fingering.
So if the kids wanted to look up, what should they be looking for period fingering?
Look for a piece called, I will put it in the chat, Applicatio by Bach, and it's written in a book for Wilhelm Friedemann Bach, and you will not be able to believe how cool it is to play. It's a 2-line prelude, but it doesn't use almost any thumbs. So you will have a lot of fun exploring this. I see Mason is asking
Mason.
about my favorite Bach piece. Oh boy. It's really impossible. But if I had to go to a desert island, I would probably take the Goldberg variations with me because they really are like an encyclopedia of styles and techniques and interpretation. But I would have a hard time choosing because the well-tempered clavier. If I could take a book of well-tempered clavier, I would probably do that too. But I don't know if it counts as many one.
So Grace Angel is asking if you could play it. Well, it's 50 minutes long, so.
Yes, 70 minutes long. I have an idea, you guys. I will send you some links of my Bach performances and maybe some other videos that I did during the confinement where I discuss, the dances of Bach and the technique and the fingering and the ornamentation. Then you can just watch it when you please, and you know how to find me now. So feel free to reach out and send me an email, and I'm happy to continue this conversation.
Thank you. And can I just have a group shot with all of the kids? See if you can turn on your camera. It would be really awesome. Julia, Mason. Great. Wonderful. Smile, everybody. Thank you so much. Magdalena, amazing class. Thank you. It was just really fantastic. And I'm sure it was incredibly informative for all of our young listeners as well as our audience members. We had quite a few, so that's really wonderful.